let's get started here. So good morning and welcome everyone to the February ESIP Drupal Working Group Telecon. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Adam Shepard, even though it says ESIP Interop. This is me down here in Woods Hole, and I'll be moderating today. So just have a few quick announcements before we get started with today's presentation. And first, on behalf of myself and David, we are so excited to be co-chairing this working group for the next coming years. But we definitely wanted to thank Bruce Karen for the just great work that he's done in building this community and organizing this just insightful and informative telecons in the past. This has just been such a cool community for us all. So just wanted to give a shout out to him and the work that he's done. Okay, so if you are a member of this working group's ESIP mailing list, you might have received an email announcing an opportunity that this working group has to send 2 people to this year's DrupalCon conference in June out in Austin. We've got $1,500 of support for 2 people, $1,500 each, I should say. So far, we've only had 1 applicant, so if you know of someone on your team or yourself who works with Drupal or is interested in Drupal and wants to attend, check out this webpage here on the slide that you can see posted up in the Webex software here. It says ESIP Drupal February. Or just shoot me off an email. My email address is adam@hui.edu, or get in touch with us at some point. Or send me something on the chat here. I don't know, reach out to us in some way if you're interested in attending DrupalCon. Also, if you aren't on a mailing list and want to, please jump on to the ESIP-Drupal mailing list. It's super easy to get connected to that. If you run to a jam, give myself a shout. All right, so let's get started. Just as a quick reminder, we are recording the presentation today, and we'll be posting up a video onto YouTube of this. So we ask that you just mute your mics if you have that capability on your computers and phones during the presentation if you aren't asking a question or participating. And this just helps us attain like really good audio, or best audio as possible, so that other people can enjoy the telecon in the future. But please feel free to submit questions over the chat during the presentation, and we'll certainly leave time at the end for Q&A and discussion. So by all means, unmute yourself when the presentation's over so we can chat. So today's presenters are Inigo Sangil from the Long-Term Ecological Research Network Office, and Jason Talent from University of Michigan Biological Station, and Dave Reid, the Senior Drupal Developer at Lullabot. So I will pass off the Webex ball to Inigo, who will begin the presentation on DEIMS, a Drupal profile to serve and manage ecological data. So Inigo, let me pass the ball off.
Thanks. Let me see if I can grab the controls and share my desktop. I've done this before. So. Here. All right, so good morning or good afternoon to some of us. And so what I like to do today with you guys is give you a very brief overview of what DEIMS is, and then Jason is going to do a brief demo, and then Dave Reid, who is the main developer, is going to cover some aspects of DEIMS, and then maybe we have a few more minutes to discuss what is the roadmap from here on. But first, I'd like to thank you all for attending this meeting. I know that we all have very busy schedules and you have time to do any other thing. So thanks for being there, and I hope you like it, and I hope you connect with us to keep this exciting work going. So without further ado, I'm going to tell you a little bit of background of why are we doing this. And so you should know that I work for LTER, the Long-Term Ecological Research Network. The vision and mission of the LTER is there. You can see it on the screen. But really, it is a distributed network of sites that conduct ecological research on the globe, and mainly sponsored by the NSF and the countries that host this network. And it has been doing business for over 30 years, some even longer than that. And what I mean 30 years is continuous records of many different variables or ecosystem services that are out there. In the U.S., you're seeing a map right now of the locations in the U.S. You have about 26 sites, and including Antarctica and Puerto Rico and Alaska. And there are about 1,800 scientists associated with this network. However, the team that manages data and information for this network is really, really slim. And we thought that we needed a good solution for manage this the heterogeneity of data that we deal with. So the challenges is well, our goal is to provide ecologists and others with a good information management system. But we have a problem here of big data, not in the sense that it's really voluminous, in the sense that it's very heterogeneous, very, very dispersed, and it has many, many dimensions. On the left, you see a little bit some of these dimensions. So we are looking at biodiversity, we are looking about the chemistry, weather data, a number of synthesis data sets. Overall, a single site in the U.S. might be monitoring of the order of 2,000 different parameters on different experiments and projects. The dispersion of data is phenomenal, and everybody in every site does things slightly different in terms of methodologies and data storage and data management. So this is kind of why is this a big data problem. And this is a slide from John Porter, who is on the call, and this is also sometimes a big data problem in terms of the volume of data, and this is a LiDAR image of the Virginia ecosystems. The other challenge is that when we ship out our data to national clearinghouses that are out there, including the Oak Ridge National Clearinghouse, then it's just aggregated with thousands of other data sets, and discovering this data, it becomes a chore if it is not well described. But ultimately, what we want to do is create a tool or a set of tools that facilitate the integration and synthesis of this diverse data. For that, we use the known standards to share metadata and describe the metadata, such as the ISO 19131, and of course the older standards sponsored by the FGDC, the EML that we use at LTER. And there are others that we might support or leverage in some way. But the idea is finally to provide scientists the means to just aggregate and integrate and synthesize this data. And for example, in here you see about 4 different temperature records and sea level from different stations. So this is kind of the goal that you have to have in mind, with the thinking that the data is just everywhere in different formats and so on. So this is where DEIMS comes into place. And DEIMS, we call this the Drupal Ecological Information Management System. We started in 2008, pushed by Marshall White here at LTER. And nowadays there is a profile that Dave Reid championed, who is in the call, and you will hear from him. And it really we solidify our initial efforts into this much more professional profile, which you are going to have the ability to use. If you are interested, of course, in developing and contributing like that, you should know that the repository for this is in GitHub, and from here we push to Drupal.org. These are a list of a few of the features that DEIMS packed together overall between content and contributed and custom modules of Drupal. There are about 135 modules right now, and we keep extending this profile. But it's best to see this thing in action, right? This is the core of what we manage. We have research projects that are at different places that contain data sets, and these data sets have different data containers and might have different parameters that are or observables that we are monitoring. These things are conducted on locations and conducted by people using methodologies and result in publications. So there is this network of interlinked information that we need to manage and serve to the public in a way that makes sense. And so I'm gonna ask Adam to pass the ball to Jason Talent, and so he can continue giving you a little demo, and then we'll give it to Dave and so on. Okay.
All right, howdy everyone. I'm going to work on sharing this desktop here. All right. So, hello everybody. This is Jason Talent from the University of Michigan Biological Station. And hopefully on your screen you can see our implementation of DEIMS. And I can take no credit whatsoever for this. My predecessor, Kyle Kleiser, who worked with Inigo and various folks at LTER, put this together, and I'm only sort of the maintainer at this point, although I'm, as will be talked about later, in the process of upgrading to the new instance of DEIMS in Drupal 7. So what I'm going to do is essentially sort of take you through that model that Inigo just showed and sort of show essentially what it looks like and how you navigate the site. So this is our main landing page. And things related to the site immediately pop out. You've got publications from the site, data sets, current research projects, highlighted research sites. We have our data management policy and other data management related information for researchers and students, as well as some of our real-time data. So we have a buoy in Douglas Lake, and we have various other instruments which are streaming live data. But what's most interesting and most relevant to DEIMS is starting with the data. So if we go to primary data sets here, these are data sets that we've archived in our system. And there's numerous data sets, but also just sort of drill down on one. At our site these days, carbon flux is a big area of research. So we can search for carbon flux, maybe. All right, and so these are data sets related to or have the keyword basket search carbon flux, and we can drill down to another data set here, forest heterogeneity effects and microclimate. So here we go. This is our implementation. So we've got this data set here. We have an abstract for the data set. The files that are available, we categorize files into private or public file. If folks are actively working on research, or if they're in the process of publishing, then we sort of keep them in the private world. And if someone is interested, they can contact the data originator. Or if it's a data set that's open and available to the public, we have them as public files, and someone can click on the CSV or the zip file, and they can say who they are, where they're from, what their purpose for use is, and then they can just publicly download it. As we scroll down over here in this panel, we can see the originator, the contact, their associated researchers, the associated research sites, the referring projects, and we've got an EML export here. I'll scroll down and then we'll go back to the EML export. So essentially methods used in collection of the data. Some of them are long, some of them are short. Instrumentation that's used in the collection of the data, and then the variables that are within the data set, as well as some of the search terms that are here. So this is a great way of sort of creating that sort of interlinking between data, researchers, publications, and research sites, which is really, the core of DEIMS. I want to go under the hood in a minute here, just so that you can see the background, but I want to just do a little EML export here. So what also makes this neat is that, so now we have all this data, we have all this metadata into our repository, and with the use of the EML module that's in the background working, we can export the metadata out in an appropriate format that can then scale into various other repositories and discovery methods. So, you know, compliant EML for that data set. It's there and accessible. So I've got a couple more minutes. I just want to sort of, like I said, go under the hood so that you can see. Well, I take that back. I think with the time that I have, I'm going to just sort of show you how some interconnectivity here. So like I said before, if we were thinking about the model that Indigo showed, you know, you've got data sort of at its core, but it's interconnected with lots of different things. And so we've got this data set, which is really neat, but I'm actually interested in something else related to the research site. So if we go to research sites, here's our research site. It's documented. We have coordinates for it, other data descriptors for the site. We even have photos or documentation of the instruments that's on the site. And then we have links to publications. And so we can see all the publications associated with that particular piece of that instrument or that research site. And we also have the various data sets that are associated with that research site. So we can see that it's not just that data set, but numerous other data sets are being collected at that site based on the years and the current research projects that are also associated with that site. So this has been really great for us because it has, you know, even though a lot of these research groups are all working at the same site, they were sort of working in a vacuum to some extent, and this has allowed for a lot greater collaboration between research groups than was previously used before the implementation. And I think that I'll jump real quick here, and we'll just do a quick under the hood look. And so now I'm logged in as an admin on the site. But what's great about this is that we have contributing users, and so as an information manager for UMBS, I do a lot of the data entry as well as sort of the coordination and helping people QA/QC their data. But the system is set up so that anyone who's a contributing user to the site can upload their own data sets, and they can describe their own data files and whatnot. So if one were to say, I'm a researcher and I've completed some research and I've got a data set to bring in, then I log into the system and I go to submit data and I go to a new data set and I can sort of input all the metadata associated with that file. You know, so the basics of title and abstract, collection dates, and then methods you use for quality assurance. And this is all brought in through DEIMS. My understanding is that it's all brought in through DEIMS. I would bet that my predecessor, Kyle, did some modifications to it, but I think the vast majority of it is packaged with the DEIMS instance. And then so on and so forth. You know, once you've defined your data set, you can define data files that are associated with that data set, as well as define new variables that make up that data set. And you know, the power of a database, it all sort of comes together seamlessly for the user. My understanding also is that in the new development of DEIMS in Drupal 7, that some of this process for inputting data is streamlined, or there's some reduction in some of the redundancy that's there, which maybe can be talked about later. But I think that's, in terms of time, I think that's pretty good for me. So I will stop sharing here and let Dave take over. David.
All right, let's see. I'll share my desktop as well. All right. So my name is Dave Reid, and I've been involved in the Drupal community for a couple of years, I guess 8 years now, so it's quite a while, I guess. And I was working for Palantir.net, who's based out of Chicago, and we were working with the long-term ecological research and LTER for this kind of DEIMS distribution for Drupal 7. And it was a really interesting project to me because it was, kind of an opportunity to leverage new Drupal 7 technologies, kind of take a revamp and a reorganization of how things were structured to hopefully make things work better for these information managers that are working on these sites every day. And I take a personal amount of pride to that, like making sure that people that use the site every day, not the people like me that go in every month or so, like actually enjoy using the site. So I'm hoping that's a positive goal from what we've done so far. So I'll kind of show off a couple of things more on the Drupal side a little bit. So one of the first things I wanted to show off was the North Temperate Lakes Research Station developed this really neat feature kind of independently of this data explorer and like being able to actually view the data sets. Because for the most part, these data are in CSV files, which means you can download them and do whatever you want with them on your computer. But maybe I'm a researcher, I want to see if this data set, does it contain something I might be interested in without having to download the entire 1 gigabyte file or something like that. And so they developed this feature on their Drupal 6 version, and we found it really interesting as something to maybe bring in as a feature for the entire platform. So everyone can have this. So it's simple. It's a nice thing you can search, and I'll find one base that has airports because that's the one I like to use when I was developing this. And so I've got a soil temperature data set. If I go to the data, actually I have it open in a separate thing here. So I've got my hourly soil temperature data source that I'm going to explore or download. And I can select which fields I want to have in my download. I can select, minimum and maximum year if I'm only interested in certain years. If I was only interested in soil temperatures from 8 p.m. to 12 p.m. Central or something like that, I could do that. And with this Data Explorer, I can either preview it just here in the web browser or download a CSV. And it's kind of nice because I get the option and I can start viewing it and interacting it right on the site. So this is the feature that we kind of took over and revamped for the Drupal 7 site. So how this works is you saw Inigo's kind of steps of stuff. There's a data set which has multiple data sources, and in those data sources there's variables that describe the data that's inside of them. And so how this kind of works is it uses the data source and its variables to kind of show this stuff independently in this Data Explorer. I'm going to use the word data a lot. I apologize in advance. So this is the new Drupal 7 Data Explorer. So I'm on this data source about something about water. That's very vague, but I can select which columns I want to have. I can select all of them right away. If I want to filter by a certain date, I get a nice date picker for what times I want to include. If there's codes in my data set, key value codes, I can select which ones I want to have relevant. And I get web preview or download, kind of like the same. And I can do exactly that. Let's see if it loads here. Yep. I've got I'm showing the first 500 of 171,000. I get a nice view of what's possible here, and I can filter it down and then get a download if I wanted. And kind of how this works in the looking at the back end in the UI part of how this works and it's brought together. So we've got this Canada hydro data set, and it has these 10 or so variables that we're using for the Data Explorer, and it's got, what type of thing is it? Is it just a nominal variable, just kind of generic, or is it a date time? Is it a code list, and that kind of thing. And so the user can view these directly here, but on the administration side, if I'm editing the Canada Hydro data source, I've got my variables all here, and I can edit all that stuff directly here. And it's kind of neat because, if we change what kind of variable this is, if I were entering a new thing, if I select physical quantity, it kind of gives me more contextual things to enter automatically. So if I can enter in missing values, I can enter in a unit what's being measured if it's a physical quantity, which this defaults to kind of a standard list provided by LTER. But I can also enter in a custom one. So I'm not limited by their standard units if I couldn't find what I needed. I can set a minimum and maximum and precision. And then there's this Data Explorer setting that means, hey, I'm totally okay showing this thing in our Data Explorer, or the user can filter on this too. And that's what the information manager would click on there to expose it. And then the other thing that's required is, if we were to be using the CSV file to display this Data Explorer, it could be very expensive on the server side to read a large CSV file, parse it for certain columns of a certain value. You'd have to load it all in and that kind of thing. And it's just not a good way to do that. And so this North Temperate Lake Station had developed, once we've got a data set or a data source, we're going to dump all of its data into a database, essentially, that matches what we're putting in the Drupal site. And that's the way that they can explore it and filter it easily. And we kind of made that a little bit better to enter as well. We actually have on the data source here, it's a new field called the schema field that allows you to just refer to some kind of database or table. And so I can select, I've got my database, and I loaded this data set into the Canada Hydro table, or I could pick which one I wanted to. So this way you're not, giving your administrators a free-form text field that could potentially load the user's table or something. It's very kind of structured to what they can select from here. And that way it's kind of nice and giving them kind of structure and guidance too. So once they've got the variables loaded in and their table selected, they can use that Data Explorer. And that's kind of how it gets all pulled together. Another thing, I guess I kind of wanted to touch on the whole making the experience easier for the administrators too. And I kind of showed that with editing the variables, how it gave me a little bit of guidance of what type of variable is it. I can enter in the more details. If it's a nominal variable, I don't need to see all that stuff. I just need to enter the minimum of what I need. Another interesting feature that we developed was for data entry, if you wanted to reuse a variable that you had used in a previous data set, we added this kind of like search box for trying to reuse an existing variable. It essentially kind of clones it. So if I were to do, I can see above I hear comments as a variable I've used before. So let's say we wanted another one just like that. If I typed it in comments, I can see in my autocomplete results, the different types of variables named comments. And if I click one, it will automatically fill all the details that I had used on that previous variable for me. And this is a custom field type that we developed for DEIMS. And I think it works really well. And it's trying to take that step of making things easier to do. One of the nice things about this also, I'm actually editing the data set, the top level structured item. One of the things we found kind of a little bit problematic looking at the Drupal 6 version is that maybe it's a little bit tough to bring all the stuff together. You have all those different levels, the data set, data source, variables, and kind of all of those were administered or edited separately and then brought together kind of with references. With the new Drupal 7 version, we're taking advantage of a module called inline entity form, which allows us to use references to stuff, but allows us to also administer them directly from the page. So if I just reload this edit form for this data source, which is the top level thing, to load everything, because it's quite a big form. That's the only thing bad about it. Not ideal. Load. We've got this tab called Data Sources. And this is our reference field to the data sources relevant to this data set. And I can go right in here and I can edit this directly, which is just really nice because I don't need to figure out which one I need to edit, or it's not in a pop-up that might take me away from the current page. It's right all here contextual to what I need. And I can edit the variables directly from here, all that kind of stuff. And I can save, I'll hit cancel there if I don't want to save anything on this live site. Otherwise, an ego might get mad at me. Or I could clone this data source. Say, I'm running data collection from 2008 to 2012, and I want to start a new data set from 2014 to 2018. But I want to copy everything that I did before. I could clone this data source just right here easily and then edit it again. And it's just kind of making that easy to do. And we also kind of have that same thing with other things that are referenced, like the people associated with this data set. I can see right here that I've got this Professor Diane McKnight as the owner, and she's a person, and I can go in and I could edit who this owner of the data set is directly from here. So I can edit this person if I needed to, and this changes where she's used anywhere across the site. So this is typically handy when you have a new person add. I can add a new person directly from here. So yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to demo, and yeah, I'll pass the torch back.
That is awesome, Dave. As you should know, you guys should know that Dave has developed about 100 different modules for Drupal and contributes to the core, and I mean, he's probably the top developer in Drupal. And without him, none of this would have been possible. So we are incredibly grateful for him and the awesome work that he has done for DEIMS. There are many other things that we cannot cover in this short hour. I think I have about 10 more minutes or so to cover a couple of more aspects of DEIMS, and then we can go into a discussion Q&A with you guys. So one of the cool things that Dave did is he used Drupal core feature to export the content that you've been seeing in XML format, and particularly he made much more flexible what our former EML module to export as EML compliant XML, so we could adapt to other standards and make it more manageable. So in here you see, for example, for the Mexican network of LTER, an FGDC record, compliant. We also, in the same site, you see in an ISO compliant for ISO 19139 with proper extensions of ISO to accommodate attribute level data that the folks at NOAA are pushing very well. And this is the same record in this other XML flavor, in this EML compliant flavor that we use at the LTER network. And there are many other features, like I said, we cannot cover here, but you can all visit the stuff, what we've done by just asking us, or visit the Drupal page, drupal.org/project/DEIMS. And what I want to focus a little bit also is in what is next, because we are not done. We could continue developing and improving this work. There is a huge need for many other features. And in here, for example, what is immediately on the table are, so we're going to hook up the Data Explorer into some graphing capabilities. So many of the graphing libraries that are out there, what we want to add is a button to the bottom of the Data Explorer that it says, where it said web preview and download. So we'll just put another one that says graph, and maybe with a little GUI we'll attempt to graph either a scattered plot or a pie graph or a histogram or all sorts. The other thing that I already I'm quite advanced on is I have a migration package for those of you who have content structured in XML, perhaps in EML compliant XML. So a migration that would move your content from your XML into this DEIMS structure. So it will give you a head start on on your work, since it could be laborious migrating hundreds of projects and thousands of variables and data sources, right? So since you already have done the legwork of creating XML compliant content, when we want to make it bridge it to DEIMS that way. So it's in development still, but fairly advanced. I have to do a couple of more things. The other thing that we would like to do is the species taxonomies, right? So there are some Drupal solutions out there, such as the Scratchpads and Encyclopedia of Life solutions to manage, taxonomies, species taxonomies, right? Instead of reinventing, I mean, our philosophy has been always to try to leverage the work that is out there, right? And the great work that Dave Reid and many others have done with Drupal, and just adapt it a little bit so it serves the needs of the people who are doing science and ecology and biology. So these are just 3 features that we would like to do, but there are a ton more of things that we have in the backlog of things that come up with. This is where you come from, right? So connect with us, and so you can send an email to me or to anybody at the DEIMS group. You can also, if you miss this presentation or this recording, you can contact Adam or Bruce Karen. He knows also us. We'll be at the DrupalCon. We are in the process of submitting a session proposing a session for DrupalCon, and if we get voted, you'll see us there. And please get involved. There are many ways you can get involved in this work. You can use it. It's out there for you to download and in a profile. So all you have to do is follow fewer steps. You don't need to download the core separately or anything. It's everything packaged together. Just read the README for things that you need to do. Of course, you will encounter bugs. Or you will have feature requests, so just go to Drupal.org to the DEIMS project page and use the issue queue like you would use for any other Drupal module, and just try to detail there your request, and we'll address it. The way we work is, so Dave has taught us how to use GitHub in the Drupal framework, and that has made this project way more sustainable, right? Before we had it hosted in Subversion in Google Code, and it proved to be complicated. Now it's because it's in first in GitHub, and second has a very logical way of being packaged and produced. It's so much easier to maintain. But so if you feel brave and you wanna be involved in the development or in any facet of the many facets of this project, you might be more interested in the local field or more interested in certain specific feature, please get involved. If you cannot get involved in those means, but you know somebody or yourself that might have funding to further and advance this work, please get in contact with us or participate in one of the proposals that we might submit shortly to either NSF or other federal agency to advance this work, also with you in mind. So with that in mind, I think we are about 41 minutes past the hour. I want to open the floor for questions and any other discussion that you might want to have. So I'll give it back to Adam, and I want to thank you all for being there today. And so I'm going to give it back to Alan so he can direct the rest of the conversation.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you guys. Thank you, Inigo, Jason, Dave. Really cool work that you guys are involved with here. So now, if anyone has questions or just wants to jump in and discuss a topic here, please unmute yourselves and let's chat. I know I've got questions, but I'll hold off in case someone else has ideas or things they want to share.
Hey, David here. Thanks, everyone, for sharing this work. It's really inspiring. I had a question about, I guess, how generic the Data Explorer is. What kind of databases can it connect to, and can you define your own schemas for those, or is it more DEIMS specific?
Well, since Dave Reid developed the schema reference for the Data Explorer, who gave us the ability to see and query external databases, I'm going to let him jump in and tell you a little bit how to extend this beyond MySQL.
Sure. So for the question of what kind of databases can it connect to for the Data Explorer, I believe pretty much anything that Drupal can support out of the box, which includes MySQL or MariaDB, Postgres, or SQLite, is supported out of the box by Drupal core, and that could be connected to. And I know there's other database like connection projects for Oracle or the more non-typically standard database softwares. As long as Drupal can speak to it, so can the Data Explorer. And as far as altering the schema of things, you're talking about like altering like the actual schema in that database where it talks to?
Yeah, I guess defining fields and data types for those fields and linking those with the schema and database.
So I'm trying to remember offhand. Nigo, chime in if you feel like it.
Yeah. So I don't think so. Think about it, right? It's a Data Explorer. So we assume that you have a database with all your legacy data, and all we want to do is have read privileges. So the schema reference module, what it does is using the read privileges that you have encoded in the settings.local.php, you can browse the schema, but you cannot modify it. We kind of didn't go that far. It can be extended that way, but we didn't go that far. What we wanted to do is give the ability to not just see the metadata and the descriptions of the data, but to go further and drill down on and subset and filter the scientific data values, dates, code lists, and the like.
Sure.
And I think to maybe kind of clear up something too, I think that the Drupal Data Explorer kind of makes some assumptions about what the schema types you've used in your external database. So like date fields, it kind of assumes that either they're a text field or like used some kind of standard date field that would accept kind of an ISO date format. So year, month, date, and then time kind of a thing. And it's kind of up to the individual sites to make sure that those things kind of link together. I mean, it could be kind of any crazy kind of schema possible. So we have to kind of assume some things first, and it's kind of up to the individual sites to make sure it actually works. So.
Sure, that's great. Thanks, that clarifies a lot. I'll pass back to Adam, and thanks to him for hosting today.
Yeah, other than that, it's pretty agnostic about the data table or the particulars of your data. As long as you describe it well using DEIMS, so you describe your variables or your columns in their variables and they are consistent, then it will allow you to query based on those descriptions and of course a few more assumptions like they have said, which that we design it like that with having the diversity of data in mind, right? We know that there is many different ways to encode things in databases and declare columns and parameters. So we couldn't impose a particular schema, right? This is pretty much agnostic. You give it a connector, where the database is, the IP address, some reading credentials to the database that are not transparent as an administrator, they are not transparent to anybody, And with those, and the administrator sets this up, right? It connects, you hook up a particular data source with a table or a view of this external database, and then you're ready to go. You're ready to explore those data and filter out things that you might not want.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds good. Are the assumptions and standards for the data encoding, are they documented anywhere, or should we get in touch with you about that?
No, there are no assumptions. Not really, not that I know. Of course, you might encounter every now and then you're gonna bump into some issue. Just let us know, and we'll try to address it. But as far as we know, there is no encoding, issues with, about the data.
Yep. Awesome. I'll pass it back for another question.
Oh, thanks for that question.
Oh yeah, thank you.
This is Manil. I have a question about search. So is it a standard Drupal search that you're doing, or is there any special module to do that too?
Yeah, that's a good one. We provide out of the box the database index, not just the Drupal index. So we have a module that is called the Facet API, and so it's a level above the standard Drupal index of a few fields. So we let you, using the Facet API, we let you have a faceted search. We didn't cover that. I can give you, if you go to the project page, there is documentation about the Facet API.
Okay.
And so you can have all, 200 data sets, and you have your facets on the right or on the left, whatever you put them. And those facets might allow you to narrow or filter down by location, by duration of the data set, by keywords that you might have used to tag the data set, by principal investigator, or other. So there are many facets, right? Like you use every day when you go shopping, right? Like you have these ways to narrow down. So that uses the standard database index, the Facet API. However, this module allows you to use Solr, right? So you can, instead of hook up the database index, you can leverage of Apache Solr index, which is probably give you a performance boost, an enhancement. Now, I know that the group that is working with us, the TFRI, the Taiwanese Forest Research Institute, showed us how to integrate the Solr index with DEIMS, Apache Solr with DEIMS, and so it's something that we didn't package, is ready to go, but we didn't want to impose dependency on Apache Solr, but because it requires a little bit of work on the server, right?
Right.
Speaking from a one level up, we actually use the Search API module in the distribution. So it's actually kind of quick, easy to swap out. Like, oh, I want to switch from database search to Solr. That way, you don't have to change. Oh, I was using the Apache Solr module, and now I need to switch to this other thing. So it's kind of, as long as it's supported by the Search API project with Solr and database search is out of the box, it's ready to go. You just maybe need to do an initial re-index when you switch, but that's it.
Hey guys, this is Adam Shepard here. I had a question about the serialization formats, like ISO and FGDC and EML. Can you guys just talk about sort of how you guys approach that from a development standpoint, like what in terms of Drupal and how you guys architected that?
Yeah, this was Dave had a brilliant way to implement this. We have some documentation, but I'm going to let him explain how he approached this.
Sure. Do you mind actually passing screen sharing back to me for just a second?
Sure.
All right. So it was interesting coming into this, kind of taking a fresh look at, okay, so how we've got all this data represented in Drupal nodes. How do we then kind of like standardize exporting it into, EML? It's kind of the one format that we took the approach to when we first did this. But there's also this opportunity for all these other standards to possibly come down the road or be supported after we first did the install profile. And I'm a huge proponent of a terminology in Drupal 7 called view modes. It's kind of a standard way of saying, I have a thing, and I want to render it using this kind of, I want to render it using RSS, or I want to render it, view it using a teaser view, or I want to view it just the full view. And it's these view modes which are really powerful to output fields, all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, why can't we use that for EML? And so that's kind of essentially what we've done. We have this EML module that's custom to the install profile that is responsible for kind of bringing everything together using the EML view mode into a template file for the data source. And so we can actually see this if I go to the data set, and if I go to manage display, I'll actually be able to actually select how I want to have things output in the EML. It's a little bit of a mix of hard-coded stuff in the template and being able to configure it here in the UI. But I think it's a good kind of mix, because you want kind of that standardization, but say I wanted to tweak one little thing. So here I'm in my data set, the manage display of my content type, and I have this new kind of subtab for EML, like my other things that I would have in a Drupal install. And I can actually see that I've configured these display as, we've made these custom formatters for all of these things. So there's EML text that outputs as a text XML tag. Or we have we have a temporal coverage that kind of does automatically the thing with the date field. And, there's like this generic EML element for kind of references. And it's kind of nice because I set right here, okay, if I have multiple values of this owner or creator field, should it output separate creator tags? So if I have 4 values, should it be 4 different creator tags back to back as siblings? Or should it be one creator tag and those elements output inside of that thing? So there's a little bit of flexibility here in how to customize that. And then Nigu has done a great job in his team in extending this concept into other formats as well already. So it gives this nice kind of standardization for how to output something, and I thought view modes was a good fit for that.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's really an interesting concept and way to abstract, all these serialization formats. And certainly there must have been some overhead in the development, but it'll probably pay off as newer serialization formats emerge that are important to the community. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and then it all comes together kind of at the template file. So individual sites can override how they output EML if they wanted to. And so, it's pretty much basically output this field, however it's configured to do so. And it gives a lot more flexibility that way. We're hard coding a lot less logic in code for, the creator should be output this way. We're more abstracting that out into the view mode and the template. All right, I'll stop sharing again.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, it really has enabled us to quickly deploy XML content compliant in many different formats, because once you see how to produce a field formatter and a view mode and a template, then it's easy to say, I need a NASA's DIF, right, the data interchange format compliant. It's just it's like he said, right? You have the teaser module, the teaser mode in Drupal. You have RSS, why not can have your piece of content displayed as, instead of RSS XML, like ISO XML, right? It's different from what we did before. We had a custom module that it was all in PHP code, and we were not happy because it wasn't integrated with the Drupal framework, right? And so who is better to do this thing? So a person who knows Drupal inside out. And I didn't even know view modes before I started working with Dave, and I didn't know that they were in core. So I mean, I did know, like I used them, but it's one of these things that you use them without even knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you get the hang of it, then you can actually expand it. I have a few blog posts that kind of try to walk you through the field formatters and the hooks that you have to write in order to implement these view modes, if you are interested.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments or?
I've got one question that I hope is a quick one, because I know we're coming up on our time there. Right now, the data is all sort of focused on the tabular data, but occasionally we end up with data sets that really aren't tabular, in the sense that if you want to just think of them as being sort of a blob of binary object, that typically we would use in EML, we would refer to that as an other entity. Do you have any ideas as to sort of how difficult it would be to implement an addition that will allow it to handle that as well?
Yeah, thanks, John. That is a great question, and I can tell you that it would not be difficult. As a matter of fact, could you share this? Pass me the ball, Adam, a little bit.
Sure.
Great. So I'm gonna show you a little bit of the custom extensions that we've done for the Sevilleta site, and let me see if I can. Right. So the Sevilleta site has, for example, GIS data, right, which you are familiar with. It doesn't conform with the regular data. So she might have a zip file, which might contain layers, right? Spatial layers, shape files, maybe an XML to describe the metadata, a whole package that would describe a particular data set. So in this case, she might have these GIS or GDC native or Esri native metadata set with an associated file. So the way we go about it is, in this particular case, we have a small content type called special data, right? In this case, it's very simple. It only contains a very few fields that are, and they are not even breaking down the metadata in the granularity that you need. So you might, we have the ability to upload a KML file or a shape file and things like this. But if I were to have a content type that has Esri-specific fields, all I have to do is create field formatters that comply with the Esri specification, for example, if you wanted to export in Esri, or the EML specification for that singular field, right? And we've done this in Drupal 6 when I was working with the USGS. We did a number of content types in Drupal to export the smooth of GIS compliant fields. So the short answer, it can be done. It will involve just creating the specialized content types and fields that describe these new data entities, and then compliant. Now, if we are using media, for example, another great case is videos, right? So videos, we probably adapt the media module that has already the hookups to YouTube and other video services, and then just create a field formatter for these videos that complies with, for example, in EML, the other entity branch of EML, right? And that way, we'll extend and expand the coverage to non-tabular data formats. So thanks for pointing that out, John. While I am waiting for Adam to kind of wrap up, maybe I can flash the faceted search. So here on the right, on the top, sorry, you have a Google-like search. By default, you have all the hits of the data sets for the Sevilleta LTER. But on the right here, you see facets that you can filter by. In LTER, for example, we use 5 core areas, and there are 100 data sets associated in the Sevilleta, so you can filter out all of them that are not involved with population. And you have keywords and related locations where we sampled and researched. You have data set duration, so if there is one data set that spans 19 years in here and 5 months, and so you can do that. But it's a more powerful search in the sense that it instead of giving you a long list of data sets that are found by a keyword, you have the chance to narrow down by give you hints about what is in there and how is it grouped.
Great. Well, thank you guys very much. Yeah, we all look forward to DrupalCon or DEIMS at DrupalCon to discover more about what this platform can do. It's really cool. In closing, I just want to offer up to anyone, if you're interested in presenting anything that you've done with Drupal or have any ideas for telecon, please get in touch with David and myself. Finally, our next telecon is going to be March 26th, and we're going to be brainstorming about just some feedback that David and I got about the thematic meta issue tracker project that our working group is working on. So please look forward to the mailing list for more details about that. So thank you guys very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you all on behalf of LTER and DEIMS and Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity. Thanks.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.